Imagine a world waking up, not to the sound of alarms or traffic, but to the gentle whisper of the wind. The first light of dawn spills over the horizon, a soft, golden glow touching the edges of a landscape untouched by time. There are no cities here, no roads, no permanent structures, only the vast open wilderness, and in its heart, a small, quiet encampment. This is where our story begins, tens of thousands of years ago. The air is cool and crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth, wood smoke from last night's dying embers, and the subtle fragrance of wild grasses. Look closer. At the center of this clearing stands a simple dwelling, a small hut crafted from branches and covered in carefully stretched animal hides. It's not a fortress, but a temporary sanctuary, a testament to human ingenuity and resilience. These weren't permanent homes, as we know them. For our hunter-gatherer ancestors, life was a journey, a constant movement dictated by the seasons, the migration of animals, and the ripening of plants. Their shelters had to be light, easy to assemble, and just as easy to leave behind. This hut, humble as it may seem, was the nucleus of family life. It was a shield against the biting wind, a refuge from the rain, and a warm, safe space to rest after a long day's hunt. Each piece of this structure tells a story. The sturdy branches, likely gathered from a nearby grove, form the skeleton. The hides, painstakingly prepared and stitched together with sinew, create a waterproof and windproof barrier. You can almost see the marks of the stone tools used to scrape them clean, a silent record of the effort and skill invested in creating this home. This wasn't just construction, it was a ritual, a practice passed down through countless generations. Inside, the space would be compact and efficient. Animal furs would be laid on the ground for warmth and comfort. A small hearth in the center or just outside providing heat for cooking, and a focal point for social gathering. This was where stories were told, tools were mended, and the bonds of community were forged. In the quiet darkness of the prehistoric night, the glow of a small fire inside this hut was a beacon of warmth, safety, and human connection. As the sun climbs higher, the camp slowly stirs. A figure emerges from the hut, stretching in the morning light. The day's tasks are about to begin. The silence of the dawn gives way to the subtle sounds of life. The soft crunch of footsteps on the earth, the low murmur of voices, the clinking of stone against stone as tools are prepared. This is the rhythm of ancient mornings, a rhythm that has echoed through millennia. The temporary nature of these camps is a crucial concept to understand. Our ancestors didn't seek to dominate the landscape. They lived within it. They were a part of the ecosystem, moving with its ebbs and flows. When a location's resources were used, team obeyed, on allowing the land to recover. This nomadic lifestyle wasn't one of hardship, but one of deep, intimate knowledge of the environment. They knew the best places to find flint for their tools, which berries were safe to eat, and the hidden trails the deer herds followed. Their world was a library of practical knowledge, and their homes were just one chapter in a much larger story of survival and adaptation. These hide-covered huts were more than just shelters. They were a symbol of a profound relationship with the natural world. They represent a way of life that was both incredibly challenging and beautifully simple. Think about the contrast with our modern world. We build our homes to last for decades, even centuries. We anchor ourselves to one spot, creating vast, permanent cities. For our ancient relatives, home was a more fluid concept. It wasn't just a place. It was the people you were with, the skills you possessed, and the knowledge you carried in your mind. The physical shelter was just a temporary expression of that, a portable piece of their world that they could recreate wherever their journey took them. The ingenuity is astounding. Without metal, without complex machinery, they created everything they needed from the world around them. The design of these huts was a work of prehistoric engineering, optimized for warmth, stability, and portability. Some were conical, like a tipi, to shed rain and snow effectively. Others were more dome-shaped, providing maximum interior space for their footprint. The specific design would vary, based on the local climate, the available materials, and the cultural traditions of the group. As we stand here, watching this ancient scene unfold, we are witnessing the blueprint of human society. The family unit, the community, the shared efforts for survival. It all starts here, in and around these simple, temporary homes. It's a powerful reminder that for the vast majority of human history, we were wandering. Our roots are not in the soil of one place, but in the journey itself. This quiet dawn over the ancient camp isn't just a glimpse into a forgotten past. It's a look into the very foundations of who we are. The resourcefulness, the adaptability, and the deep-seated need for community and shelter. These are the traits that were honed in encampments just like this one, all those thousands of years ago. They are the legacy of the hunter-gatherers, a legacy that still echoes within us today. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this fascinating, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more explorations into our incredible human story. We have so much more to uncover together. See you in the next chapter. Ever wondered how our ancestors survived the biting cold of the Ice Age? It wasn't just about hunting mammoths. It was about building smart. And one of their most ingenious inventions was the hide-covered hut. So, what exactly were these ancient homes? Let's dig into the past and find out. When you picture an Ice Age shelter, you might think of a simple tent, but these were far more sophisticated. Archaeologists have uncovered fascinating evidence across Ice Age Europe, from sites like Masaryk in Ukraine, that shows these weren't just flimsy shelters. They were sturdy, well-designed homes, built to withstand extreme weather. The foundation of these huts often started with a frame made from the largest materials available: mammoth bones. Imagine massive tusks forming a grand, arched entrance and sturdy leg bones and vertebrae creating the main circular framework. These bones were interlocked and arranged in a deliberate pattern to create a strong, dome-like structure. At a site called Gonsi, also in Ukraine, they found dozens of mammoth skulls arranged in a circle, likely serving as a solid base for the walls. This wasn't just a bone pile, it was architecture. The bones provided the skeleton, but the real genius was in the covering. Stretched over this framework were large animal hides, likely from mammoths, woolly rhinos, or giant reindeer. These hides were sewn together, probably using sinuous thread and sharpened bone needles. To make them even more weatherproof, our ancestors might have treated the hides with animal fat, making them waterproof and more durable. The result was a multi-layered, insulated home. The thick hides themselves offered protection, but the real trick was the air trapped between the layers and within the fur. This pocket of air acted as a fantastic insulator, just like the double-paned windows we use today. It kept the precious warmth from the central hearth inside and the freezing wind outside. But how do we know all this? Archaeologists don't usually find the hides themselves, as they decay over time. The clues are in the arrangement of the bones and the artifacts found within. The circular patterns of mammoth bones are a dead giveaway. Within these circles, we find stone tools, remnants of fire pits, and even carved figurines. The distribution of these items tells us how the space was used: where they cooked, where they worked, and where they slept. The sheer density of bones at some sites, like the 149 mammoth bones used for one hut, proves these were intentional constructions, not just random accumulations. Now, let's compare these hide huts to other ancient dwellings. The famous wooden longhouses, found later in Neolithic Europe, were entirely different. They were large, rectangular structures made from timber posts, housing entire communities under one roof. They were permanent, agricultural settlements, unlike the more mobile, seasonal camps of the Ice Age hunters who built the hide huts. The hide hut was designed for a hunter-gatherer lifestyle, easy to assemble and disassemble, or at least to be built from materials found on the move. Then you have turf huts, like those used by the Vikings in Iceland and Greenland. These were built by stacking blocks of earth and grass, creating incredibly thick, insulating walls. While effective against the cold, they were more permanent and required specific environmental conditions, namely lots of turf. They were dug into the landscape, almost becoming part of it. Another type is the pit house. These were common across many cultures, including in ancient North America. People would dig a pit into the ground and then build a roof over it, often using a wooden frame covered with earth, sod, or hides. The earth itself provided excellent insulation. So, a pit house is semi-subterranean, using the ground for warmth, while a hide hut was built entirely above ground, relying on its bone frame and skin covering. Speaking of North America, let's jump across the Bering Strait. The ancestors of Native Americans, known as the Clovis people, also lived during a very cold period. While evidence of their dwellings is scarcer, it's highly likely they also used hide-covered structures. Their lifestyle as highly mobile big-game hunters fits perfectly with this type of portable or easily constructed shelter. We find their distinctive spear points all over the continent, suggesting they followed the herds. A home made of animal hides, supported by wooden poles, would have been ideal. Think of the tipi of the Plains Indians, a later and brilliant evolution of this concept. It's a perfect example of a hide-covered home designed for a mobile lifestyle, easy to pack up and move with the bison herds. We can also look to more recent subarctic peoples for clues, a practice known as Groups like the Nenets of Siberia or the Inuit of North America have traditionally used structures that echo these ancient designs. The Nenets' conical tents, called chums, are covered with reindeer hides over a wooden pole frame. The Inuit, while famous for igloos, also used hide tents, or tupiks, especially in the summer. These living traditions show us the principles of hide architecture in action and help archaeologists interpret the silent stones and bones of the past. They demonstrate how effective these materials are, and how the structures are tailored to a life centered around animal migration. So, the hide-covered hut was far more than a simple tent. It was a sophisticated piece of prehistoric engineering, born from a deep understanding of natural materials. Using a frame of mammoth bones or wood and a skin of carefully prepared hides, our ancestors created warm, durable, and often mobile homes that allowed them to thrive in some of the harshest environments on Earth. From the mammoth steppes of Ukraine to the plains of North America, this simple yet brilliant idea of a hide-covered home was one of humanity's keys to survival. It's a powerful reminder of our ancestors' resilience and ingenuity. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into the Ice Age interesting, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more dives into ancient history. See you next time. Welcome back everyone to our journey into the past. Today, we're diving into Chapter 3, Choosing the Perfect Location. Imagine you're an ancestor, thousands of years ago. Your family's survival depends entirely on the patch of land you choose to call home. This isn't about scenic views or property values. It's about life and death. How did they do it? How did they read the land with such incredible skill? Let's step into their mindset. First, let's talk about the wind. For our ancestors, wind wasn't just a breeze. It was a carrier of information and a potential threat. They would never build a shelter with its entrance facing the prevailing winter wind. That would be like leaving your front door wide open in a snowstorm. Instead, they'd find a natural windbreaker cliff face, a dense stand of trees, or the lee side of a hill. They'd watch how smoke from a small fire drifted, or how grasses bent, to understand the wind's daily and seasonal patterns. A sheltered spot meant a warmer home, less risk of fire spreading uncontrollably, and a place where precious body heat wasn't instantly stolen by a biting gust. The wind also carried scents. An upwind location meant they could smell approaching predators or game long before they could see them. It was an ancient, early warning system, all powered by the air itself. Next up, the most critical element of all, water. No water, no life. It isn't that simply. But finding the right water source was a delicate art. You'd want to be close, but not too close. Building right on the edge of a major river could mean catastrophic flooding during spring thaws or heavy rains. Our ancestors knew this. They looked for reliable year-round sources. Springs bubbling up from the ground, smaller tributary streams, or rivers with clear high water marks on the banks that told a story of past floods. They'd observe the water's quality. Was it clear or murky? Did animals drink from it? The presence of certain water-loving plants like cattails or willows signaled a stable water table. They understood that a clean, dependable water source was the absolute foundation of any successful settlement. It was for drinking, cooking, cleaning, and attracting the game they hunted. Now, let's think like a hunter. Where do the animals go? Ancient people were master trackers and observers of wildlife. They knew that animals don't wander randomly. They follow established routes, migration corridors that have been used for generations. Choosing a location near one of these highways of the animal kingdom was a strategic method. It was like setting up a grocery store right on a busy freeway. They would look for game trails, worn paths, in the earth and signs of seasonal passage. Placing their camp just off a major migration route meant a consistent food supply without living so close that they scare the animals away permanently. They could intercept herds of deer, bison, or other large game as they moved from summer to winter pastures. This was proactive hunting, based on a deep, intimate knowledge of the rhythms of the natural world. It wasn't just about food. It was about hides for clothing and shelter, and bones for tools. Then there's the sun, our original clock and heater. The sun's path across the sky was a crucial factor in site selection. In colder climates, a south-facing slope was prime real estate. Why? Because it would receive the most direct sunlight throughout the day, especially the low winter sun. This passive solar heating would melt snow faster, warm the ground, and make shelters significantly more comfortable. A south-facing cave or lientu could be degrees warmer than one facing north, a huge advantage for survival. In hot, arid climates, the strategy might be reversed. They'd seek out locations with afternoon shade from cliffs or large trees to escape the most intense heat of the day. They read the sun like a map, understanding its power to give warmth and light, and they positioned their lives to best harness that energy. Finally, our ancestors had to be long-term planners, thinking about seasonal hazards. The perfect summer camp could be a deadly winter trap. They had to evaluate a site through the lens of all 4 seasons. Was this low-lying area prone to becoming a swampy, mosquito-infested mess in the spring? Would this beautiful, open meadow be buried under impassable snowdrifts in the winter? Would this dry riverbed, or arroyo, become a raging flash flood zone during the summer monsoons? They looked for clues. They saw the debris caught high in tree branches, telling of past floods. They saw the types of vegetation that only grow in waterlogged soil. They observed which areas held snow the longest. This 4-dimensional thinking, across the entire year, was essential. They weren't just picking a spot for today. They were choosing a home that would protect their family through blizzards, floods, and droughts. Putting it all together, you can see this was an incredibly complex calculation. It was a holistic science, blending geology, biology, meteorology, and generations of accumulated wisdom. You'd find a spot in a south-facing slope, just above the floodplain of a clean stream, sheltered from the north wind by a thick forest, and overlooking a valley that served as a major game trail. It's a perfect combination of security, resources, and comfort. This wasn't luck. This was knowledge. This was the skill that allowed our species to spread across every corner of this planet. They didn't just live on the land. They lived with it in a deep, respectful partnership. They read the landscape like a book, and in its pages, they found the secret to survival. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into our ancestral past. It's truly amazing to think about the skills we've lost, but also inspiring to know that this deep connection to the natural world is a part of our shared human heritage. If you found this fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more chapters of our journey. See you next time. Welcome back to our series. In this chapter, we're diving into the backbone of ancient construction, gathering the materials. This wasn't a quick trip to a hardware store. It was a slow, methodical, and deeply communal process that shaped every aspect of daily life. Building a home wasn't just about shelter. It was an act of community, a testament to resourcefulness, and a profound connection to the land. Imagine the scene. As the seasons turned, the entire community would mobilize. This wasn't a one-person job. It required everyone's effort, with tasks divided based on skill, age, and strength. The strongest members might venture into the forests, their hands calloused from wielding stone axes, their mission to find the perfect trees for the main support poles of a structure. This was a task of patience and precision. Each tree had to be just right straight, strong, and free of disease. Felling a large tree with a stone axe was an arduous, time-consuming process, a rhythmic thud echoing through the woods for hours, even days. Once felled, these heavy poles were dragged back to the village, a monumental effort of teamwork and raw strength. Meanwhile, others, often women and younger members of the group, would be responsible for gathering smaller, but equally vital, materials. They would collect flexible branches for weaving into wattle walls, their fingers nimble and quick. They'd search for specific types of plants whose fibers could be twisted into strong cordage, or sinew, the tough, fibrous tissue from animal tendons. Sinew was the superglue and duct tape of the ancient world, an incredibly strong material used to lash poles together, attach tool heads, and bind just about anything. And nothing, absolutely nothing, was wasted. The concept of waste as we know it simply didn't exist. Every part of an animal, every piece of a plant, had a purpose. After a successful hunt, the meat provided food, but the hide was a priceless building material. Preparing a hide was another labor-intensive process, primarily handled by the women of the community. First, it had to be scraped clean of all flesh and fat. Then, it would be stretched taut on a wooden frame, secured by stakes driven into the ground. The hide was then treated, perhaps with animal brains or certain plant tannins, to soften it and make it pliable and waterproof. This process, known as tanning, could take days of rubbing, stretching, and working the hide until it was perfect. These prepared hides would then serve as durable coverings for shelters, warm bedding, or clothing. Archaeology gives us a fascinating window into these activities. When we excavate ancient settlement sites, we don't just find the outlines of houses. We find the tools that made them possible. We've unearthed entire toolkits, beautifully crafted from stone, bone, and antler. For woodworking, we find polished stone adzes and axes, their sharp edges still capable of shaping timber. We find smaller flint blades and burins, specialized tools used for finer carving and for drilling holes. These weren't just crude rocks. They were precision instruments, honed over generations. The evidence for hide processing is just as compelling. Archaeologists frequently discover scraper tools, often made from flint or animal shoulder blades. These tools show a specific type of wear and tear, a polish that comes from being repeatedly rubbed against soft, pliable material like leather. Sometimes we even find the post holes in the ground where the stretching frames for the hides once stood, a faint but powerful echo of this ancient industry. The sheer number of these tools found at a single site speaks volumes about the scale of these operations and their importance to the community as survival. Think about the skill involved. A person would need to know which trees had the straightest grain, which plants yielded the strongest fibers, and how to read the landscape to find the best resources. They needed the skill to nap a flint blade to a razor's edge, and the patience to scrape a hide for hours on end. This was knowledge passed down from grandparent to parent, from parent to child. It was a living library of ecological and technical expertise, essential for thriving in their environment. This division of labor wasn't about rigid hierarchy. It was about efficiency and mutual dependence. The hunters relied on the tool makers for their spear points. The builders relied on the tanners for waterproof coverings. The entire community relied on each other's skills and hard work. Every pole gathered, every hide scraped, was a thread in the social fabric, binding people together through shared effort and a common goal: to create a safe and stable home. The very act of building was a community-building exercise. So, when we look at the remains of an ancient structure, we're not just seeing old posts and pits. We're seeing the culmination of countless hours of labor. We're seeing the deep knowledge of the natural world. We're seeing the evidence of cooperation, of a community working in harmony with their environment. The slow, rhythmic work of gathering and preparing was the heartbeat of the settlement, a pulse that connected the people to the land and to each other. It was the essential first step in turning a piece of the wild into a place called home. Thank you for joining us for this chapter. It is truly amazing to think about the ingenuity and effort that went into every single aspect of ancient life. In our next episode, we'll move on to the construction site itself and see how all these painstakingly gathered materials were brought together to raise a home from the ground up. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, please hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss it. See you next time. Welcome, bike history lovers and engineering enthusiasts. Today, we're diving deep into the past, into a world where survival depended not just on hunting and gathering, but on brilliant, innovative construction. This is Chapter 5. The Framework. We're going to explore the incredible ingenuity of our ancestors, who built sturdy, reliable homes from the materials nature provided. Forget steel beams and concrete. We're talking about mammoth bones and flexible saplings. How did they turn these raw materials into shelters that could withstand harsh climates and the test of time? Let's uncover the secrets behind their architectural genius. Imagine the world during the last ice age, around 20,000 years ago. Europe is a vast, frozen tundra. A windswept landscape where colossal mammoths roam. For the hunter-gatherer groups living here, shelter wasn't just a comfort. It was a matter of life and death. So, what do you build with when trees are scarce and the ground is frozen solid? You use what you have. And what they had were the remains of the largest land animals on the planet. Mammoths. Archaeological sites, particularly in places like modern-day Ukraine and Russia, have unearthed some of the most astonishing structures from this period. At sites like Masirik, researchers have found circular huts constructed almost entirely from mammoth bones. We're talking about dozens of mammoths to build a single dwelling. This wasn't just a pile of bones. It was a masterpiece of prehistoric engineering. The foundation was often a ring of massive mammoth skulls, jaws, and leg bones, firmly planted into the ground to create a heavy, stable base. Think of them as the original concrete footings, anchoring the entire structure against the relentless Arctic winds. These weren't small huts either. Some were up to 8 meters in diameter, providing communal living space for an entire extended family. The real genius, however, was in the framework itself. The walls and roof were a complex, interlocking lattice of tusks, ribs, and vertebrae. Long, curved tusks were used to form the arched supports for the roof, their natural shape creating a self-supporting dome. This dome, or conical shape, is one of the strongest and most stable structures in nature. It distributes weight evenly and is incredibly aerodynamic, allowing fierce winds to flow over it rather than pushing against a flat wall. The builders would carefully interlock the bones, using the sockets and joints to their advantage, creating a surprisingly rigid frame without a single nail or screw. It was a giant, three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle made of bone. Once the bony skeleton was in place, it needed a skin. The framework was covered with large animal hides, probably from mammoths, reindeer, or horses. These were stitched together and stretched taut over the bones, creating a weatherproof layer. Gaps were likely filled with turf, moss, or clay to provide insulation against the biting cold. Inside, a central hearth would provide warmth for cooking and living, with a smoke hole cleverly left at the apex of the roof. These mammoth bone huts were more than just shelters. They were monuments to human resilience and a testament to the deep understanding our ancestors had of geometry and structural mechanics, all learned through observation and necessity. They were semi-permanent homes, strong enough to last for years, yet built from the very animals that sustained them. Now, let's journey across the world and forward in time, to the vast forests and plains of North America. Here, the environment was completely different. Instead of frozen tundra, there were abundant woodlands. And so, the building materials changed. The mammoth was gone, but in its place were endless forests of young, flexible trees. The architectural principles, however, remained surprisingly similar. Indigenous peoples across the continent developed a variety of portable and from the tipi of the Great Plains to the wigwam of the eastern woodlands, all based on a framework of poles. Let's look at the wigwam, a classic example of sapling-based construction. The process began with selecting the right trees. Young, straight saplings of species, like willow or cedar, were harvested. Their key property was flexibility. These poles, maybe 3 to 5 meters long, were driven into the ground in a circle or an oval. The genius part came next. The tops of the poles were bent inward and lashed together at the center, usually with cordage made from plant fibers or animal sinew. This created a strong, resilient, dome-shaped framework. The act of bending the poles created tension, which made the entire structure incredibly strong and stable. It's the same principle behind a modern camping tent, but perfected thousands of years ago. The geometry was crucial. The dome shape, just like with the mammoth huts, was excellent at shedding wind and rain. For additional strength, horizontal hoops of even more flexible saplings were woven around the vertical poles, creating a basket-like grid. This grid not only reinforced the frame, but also provided a perfect lattice for attaching the outer covering. This covering could be anything from large sheets of birch bark to woven mats made of cattails or reeds. These materials were lightweight and waterproof. In the summer, the covering might be a single layer for ventilation. In winter, multiple layers would be applied, with insulation like moss or dried grass packed in between, creating a warm, snug home. What made these pole frame structures so brilliant was their adaptability. They could be built to withstand storms, yet they were fundamentally designed for mobility. The materials were lightweight and readily available almost anywhere. A group could dismantle their wigwam, roll up the valuable coverings and mats, and move to a new location. At the new site, they would simply harvest new poles and reassemble their home. Some groups would even leave the pole frameworks standing in their seasonal camps, returning year after year to the same spot and simply recovering the existing frame. This blend of durability and portability was perfectly suited to a semi-nomadic lifestyle, following the seasons and the availability of resources. So, what is the common thread between a mammoth bone hut on the frozen plains of Ice Age Europe and a sapling wigwam in the forests of North America? It's a profound understanding of structural engineering, born from deep observation of the natural world. In both cases, our ancestors used the inherent properties of their materials, the weight and interlocking shapes of bones, the tension and flexibility of saplings to create optimal designs. They understood that a dome or cone was the most efficient shape for a freestanding structure, offering maximum interior space with minimal material, while also providing the best defense against the elements. These weren't just primitive huts. They were sophisticated architectural solutions, perfectly tailored to their environment and the lifestyle of the people who built them. They were homes built to last through blizzards and storms, yet light enough to move with the seasons. They represent a universal human drive, the need to create a safe, stable place to call home, using whatever is at hand. It's a story of ingenuity, resourcefulness, and a connection to the natural world that we can still learn from today. The bones and the poles tell a story of survival, of family, and of the timeless principles of good design. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into our architectural past. It is amazing to see how logic and creativity have always been at the heart of human innovation. If you found this fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more chapters on how our ancestors conquered their world. Let me know in the comments which structure impressed you, more the bone fortress or the flexible pole home. See you in the next video. Welcome back to our journey into the past, where every object tells a story of survival and ingenuity. Today, we're diving deep into Chapter 6, a process that is as much an art form as it is a science. Preparing animal hides. This was one of the most essential skills for survival, transforming a raw animal skin into clothing, shelter, and tools. It's a labor-intensive process, demanding patience, strength, and an intimate knowledge of the natural world. So, what does it take to turn a stiff, raw hide into something soft and wearable? The journey begins with soaking. Imagine a freshly harvested hide, stiff and covered in dirt and blood. The first step is to submerge it in water, often in a running creek or a large vessel. This soaking process, which can last for several days, serves two purposes. First, it rehydrates the skin, making it pliable and easier to work with. Second, it helps to loosen the hair and any remaining flesh. The water needs to be changed regularly to prevent the hide from putrid. It's a delicate balance, a conversation between the tanner and the hide, coaxing it back to a workable state. Once the hide is fully rehydrated and supple, the real physical labor begins with scraping. There are two main scraping stages: deherring and the hide is draped over a smooth, rounded log or a specially made scraping beam, using a scraper, often crafted from a sharpened bone, antler, or later, a piece of metal. The tanner painstakingly removes every last bit of hair from one side and all the fat, muscle, and membrane from the other. This is grueling, repetitive work. You have to apply just the right amount of pressure, too little, and you won't get the hide clean. Too much, and you risk gouging or tearing the precious skin. You can almost feel the rhythmic scrape, 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 a sound that would have echoed through camps for hours on end, as the hide slowly reveals its clean, pale surface. After the scraping is complete, the hide is essentially a blank canvas, but it's still not leather. If you were to let it dry at this stage, it would turn into a stiff, hard sheet, almost like a piece of wood. This is called rawhide, which is useful for things like drumheads or rope, but not for clothing. To make it soft, we need to alter its protein structure, and that starts with stretching. The wet, scraped hide is stretched out on a wooden frame or staked out on the ground. As it dries, it shrinks, and the frame holds it under constant tension. This process aligns the fibers within the skin, preventing it from becoming hard and brittle. Tanners would constantly check the tension, adjusting the lacing to ensure the hide dried evenly. You can picture it, a ghostly white square stretched against the sky, slowly tightening as the sun and wind do their work. But even a stretched hide will still be somewhat stiff. The next step is where the magic of softening, or breaking, truly happens. This stage is all about motion. The tanner needs to work the hide continuously as it dries to keep the fibers from seizing up and gluing themselves together. One common method was to rub it vigorously over a rope or a blunt stake. Another was to pull it back and forth through a loop of sinew or a hole in a post. Sometimes a group of people would work together, pulling and stretching the hide between them. This is also where brains come in literally. Animal brains contain natural emulsifiers, lesser thin, that act as a lubricant, penetrating the hide's fibers and making them incredibly soft and supple. The brain would be mashed into a paste with water, slathered all over the hide, and worked in deeply. It's a messy hands-on process, but the result is a beautifully soft material that feels almost like cloth. Now, not all hides are created equal. The choice of animal was crucial and depended entirely on the intended use. Bison hides were the giants of the plains, prized for their incredible thickness and warmth. A winter bison robe, with the hair left on, was an unparalleled source of insulation against bitter cold, serving as both a blanket and a coat. Its sheer size also made it perfect for crafting the strong, durable covers of tippet. Working a bison hide was a monumental task, requiring immense strength. Deer and elk hides were the go-to materials for clothing. Elk hide is thick and durable, but more pliable than bison, making it ideal for sturdy moccasins, leggings, and winter shirts. It offered a great balance of protection and flexibility. Deer hide, on the other hand, is much thinner and lighter. It creates a wonderfully soft, supple leather, often described as having a velvet-like texture. This made it the preferred choice for everyday shirts, dresses, and pouches. Its lightness meant it wouldn't weigh the wearer down, which was essential for people who are constantly on the move. The thickness of the hide directly correlated to its insulating properties and durability. A thick bison hide could stop a cold wind in its tracks, while a thin deerskin garment was perfect for a mild summer day. Our hide is now soft and supple, but it's still vulnerable to water. A Brenton hide, if it gets wet, will dry stiff again unless it's reworked. The final step to waterproof and preserve the hide is smoking. The dry, softened hide is sewn into a cone or a bag and suspended over a smoky, smoldering fire. The key is to use a cool, dense smoke, not hot flames. Punky, rotten wood was often the preferred fuel, as it produced a rich, thick smoke that would slowly permeate the hide. This process could take many hours. The smoke contains aldehydes which coat the individual fibers of the hide. This coating prevents the fibers from sticking together when they get wet, meaning the leather will remain soft and pliable even after being soaked and dried. Smoking also gives the hide its characteristic tan or golden brown color and a pleasant, smoky scent that acted as a natural insect repellent. From a raw, bloody skin to a soft, smoky, water-resistant piece of leather, this transformation is a testament to deep ecological knowledge and incredible hard work. Each step soaking, scraping, stretching, softening, and smoking was essential, and the careful selection of bison, elk, or deer hide ensured that the final product was perfectly suited for its purpose, whether it was a warm winter robe, a sturdy pair of moccasins, or a lightweight shirt. This wasn't just a craft, it was a cornerstone of culture and survival. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the world of hide tanning. It's a process that connects us directly to the resourcefulness of our ancestors. If you enjoyed this chapter, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the past. See you next time. Welcome, bike history buffs and craft enthusiasts. Today, we're diving deep into Chapter 7 of our series. Covering the structure, we've built our sturdy frame, and now it's time to transform it from a skeleton into a true home. This is where the real artistry and ingenuity of ancestral builders shine through. The first step was a monumental task: preparing the hides. This wasn't just a matter of throwing a few skins over the poles. It was a carefully orchestrated process that often involved the entire family. Typically, between 10 and 20 bison hides were needed, each one meticulously scraped, tanned, and softened. This tanning process was crucial. It made the hides durable, pliable, and resistant to decay. It was hard, physical work, often taking weeks to complete. The women of the tribe were the masters of this craft, their knowledge passed down through generations. They knew exactly how to treat each hide to achieve the perfect balance of strength and flexibility. Once the hides were ready, they were stitched together to create one massive, semicircular canvas. This was a feat of engineering in itself. Sinew, a tough, fibrous tissue from animals, was used as thread. When sinew gets wet and then dries, it shrinks and tightens, pulling the seams together with incredible force. This created a bond that was not only strong but also naturally water-resistant. The shape of this large cover was precisely calculated. It wasn't just a random assortment of hides. It was a carefully designed pattern that would wrap perfectly around the conical frame, leaving an opening at the top for smoke and a doorway at the bottom. Now comes the moment of truth: draping the cover. This was a communal effort, a moment of teamwork and shared strength. A special, taller pole at the back of the structure, often called the lifter pole, was used. The center of the massive hide cover was attached to the top of this pole. Then, with coordinated effort, the pole was hoisted into place, lifting the heavy cover with it. From there, the two sides of the cover were carefully pulled around the frame, like wrapping a giant cloak around the skeleton of poles. It was a breathtaking sight, watching the structure instantly transform into a recognizable home. With the cover draped, the next task was to secure it. This wasn't as simple as just tying it down. At the front of the structure, where the two sides of the cover overlapped, a series of wooden pins were used. These pins, often beautifully carved from ash or choketree wood, were pushed through corresponding holes along the edges of the hides. They functioned like a row of buttons, holding the seam closed from the doorway up to the smoke flaps. These pins were not only functional but also decorative, adding a touch of personal flair to the home's entrance. They were easy to remove, allowing the occupants to open or close the front, seemed to adjust ventilation. But what about the bottom edge? How was the cover anchored to the ground to prevent it from flapping in the wind? Around the base of the cover, a series of small holes were punched. Rawhide cords were threaded through these holes and then tied to stakes driven into the ground. In some cases, especially in rocky terrain where stakes were impractical, heavy stones were placed along the bottom hem of the cover. This created a tight seal with the earth, keeping out drafts and critters. This meticulous anchoring ensured the home was stable and secure, even in the face of the prairie's fierce winds. Let's talk about waterproofing, a critical element for any shelter. While the sinew seams were naturally tight, families took extra steps to ensure their home was completely dry. A common method was to apply a mixture of animal fat and natural pigments, like ochre, along the seams. This greasy substance, known as sizing, would repel water, causing rain to beat up and roll right off. Think of it as ancient gore. This process had to be repeated periodically to maintain its effectiveness. Another routine task in the upkeep of the home. The plains are famous for their relentless winds. To combat these, an inner lining was often added. This second layer of hides, usually lighter and more beautifully decorated, was hung from the poles inside the main structure. It typically reached about 5 to 6 feet high, creating a pocket of air between the outer cover and the inner living space. This air pocket acted as insulation, keeping the interior warmer in the winter and cooler in the summer. It also served as a crucial windbreak, channeling drafts that might sneak under the outer cover-up and out through the smoke hole at the top, rather than into the living area. This dew cloth, also prevented condensation from dripping onto the occupants. The ingenuity didn't stop there. The smoke flaps at the top of the structure were a brilliant piece of climate control technology. These were two wing-like extensions of the cover at the apex, each controlled by a long, separate pole that reached the ground outside. By adjusting these two poles, a family could change the direction and size of the smoke hole opening. If the wind was coming from the west, they would adjust the flaps to create an opening on the east side. This used the wind's own power to create a draft that would pull smoke from the central fire straight up and out of the dwelling, ensuring the inside remained clear and breathable. It was a simple, yet incredibly effective, ventilation system. Finally, the doorway itself was more than just a gap. It was typically covered by a separate piece of hide, often stretched over a small wooden frame, like a miniature door. In winter, a heavier bison hide with the fur still on might be used for extra insulation. This door could be propped open for ventilation or tied shut for privacy and protection from the elements. Every single element, from the sinew thread and wooden pins to the smoke, flaps, and inner lining, was a testament to a deep understanding of materials and environment. Covering the structure wasn't just construction, it was a living craft, a dialogue between the people and the world around them, resulting in a home that was strong, adaptable, and beautiful. Thanks so much for joining us for this chapter. The level of detail and skill involved is truly astounding. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss our next chapter, where we'll step inside and explore the interior arrangement of the home. See you next time. Welcome back to our journey into the past. In our last chapter, we braved the biting winds and endless snow of the Ice Age. Today, we step inside, leaving the frozen world behind to discover the warmth and life hidden within a prehistoric home. Let's push aside the heavy hide flap and enter a sanctuary carved out of the cold. The first thing that greets you isn't the sight, but the smell. It's a rich, comforting blend of wood smoke, roasted meat, and the earthy scent of dried herbs. Your eyes adjust to the dim light, and you see the heart of the home, a central fire pit. It's not a roaring blaze, but a bed of glowing, ruby-red embers, pulsing with gentle heat. A thin ribbon of smoke coils lazily upwards, escaping through a small opening in the roof, carrying with it the aroma of pine and oak. This fire is more than just warmth. It's the center of their universe. It's where stories are told, tools are made, and the day's hunt is transformed into a life-giving meal. This gentle glow illuminates a space that is surprisingly full of life and texture. Your feet sink into soft layers of animal hides and dried moss spread across the floor, instantly insulating you from the frozen ground beneath. The walls of the hut, whether made of mammoth bones, sturdy timber, or woven branches packed with mud and clay, are lined with more furs. You see the thick, shaggy pelts of bison, the dense wool of muskoxen, and the soft, spotted skins of deer. Run your hand along one. It's not just a blanket, it's a masterpiece of thermal engineering. Let's talk about the science behind this simple but brilliant technology. Each hair on an animal's hide traps a tiny pocket of air. When you layer these hides, you create thousands of these pockets. Air is a poor conductor of heat, so this trapped layer acts as an incredibly effective insulator. It prevents the warmth generated by the fire and their own bodies from escaping, while blocking the bitter cold from seeping in. It's the same principle we use today in our down jackets and double-glazed windows. The people of the Ice Age didn't need to know the physics. They knew what worked. They observed the animals that thrived in the cold and adopted their secrets for survival. Now, look around the circular space. Everything has its place. Along one curve of the wall are the sleeping areas. These aren't just piles of furs, but carefully constructed beds. A base layer of springy heather or fragrant pine boughs provides cushioning and lifts them off the cold floor. On top of this are thick, heavy bearskins or wolf pelts, with softer rabbit or fox furs for the final, cozy layer you'd pull over yourself. Imagine curling up in one of these nests, the fire's warmth on your face, the soft fur against your skin, and the howl of the wind outside sounding distant and powerless. It's a profound sense of security and comfort. Life's daily rhythm is etched into the objects scattered around the hut. Leaning against the wall are bundles of spears, their fire-hardened wooden shafts and razor-sharp flint points awaiting the next hunt. In a corner, you see a collection of stone tools. There are heavy, fist-sized choppers for butchering large game, and delicate leaf-shaped blades for finer work. You might see a woman sitting near the fire, her fingers deftly working a piece of flint. With a sharp crack, a flake falls away. She's not just making a tool. She's continuing a tradition of knowledge passed down through countless generations. Each tool is a testament to their ingenuity and deep understanding of their materials. Look up, and you'll see bundles of dried plants hanging from the ceiling rafters. There are herbs for medicine, flavorful additions for stews, and dried mushrooms gathered in the warmer months. Woven baskets, crafted from willow branches or tough grasses, are filled with nuts, seeds, and dried berries. These are the pantries of the past, a carefully managed larder to see them through the long, lean months of winter. You might also see strips of meat or fish hanging near the fire, slowly smoking to preserve them. Every corner of this small space is optimized for survival, a testament to their foresight and planning. The air is filled with the quiet sounds of life, the soft crackle of the embers, the rhythmic scraping of a stone tool against wood, the murmur of voices sharing a story or a joke, perhaps the soft humming of a mother rocking her child, wrapped tightly in a swaddle of rabbit fur. This isn't just a shelter. It's a home, a social hub, a workshop, and a fortress against the elements all in one. It's a place where culture is born and passed on. Think about the psychological impact of this space. Outside, the world is a vast, monochrome landscape of white and gray, a place of constant danger and struggle. But inside, it's a world of color and warmth. The rich browns and reds of the hides, the bright orange of the fire, the deep green of the pine boughs. This sensory richness was a vital balm for the mind, a reminder of life and vibrancy in a frozen world. It was a space to relax, to connect with family, and to feel human. As the day ends and the long polar night descends, the family would gather closer to the fire. This was the time for stories, for myths of creation, for tales of heroic hunts, and for teaching the younger generation the ways of the world. The flickering firelight would cast dancing shadows on the walls, turning the small hut into a grand theater. The warmth they shared was more than just physical. It was the warmth of community, of shared experience, and of the unshakable human spirit that refuses to be extinguished, even in the harshest of conditions. So, as we prepare to step back out into the cold, take one last look at this sanctuary of warmth and life. It's a powerful reminder that for our ancestors, survival wasn't just about enduring the cold. It was about creating warmth, building community, and finding light in the darkness. It was about making a home. Thanks for joining us on this journey inside an Ice Age hut. In our next chapter, we'll explore the art, symbolism, and spiritual life of these incredible people. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss it. See you next time. Welcome back to our journey into the deep past. Today, we're stepping into Chapter 9, where we'll bring to life the daily routines that unfolded around an ancient shelter. Imagine a world lit by the warm glow of a central fire. A world we can piece together not just from imagination, but from the clues our ancestors left behind. What did a typical day look like for a prehistoric family? Let's find out. Picture this. The sun is rising, casting long shadows across a landscape untouched by modern life. Around a sturdy, skin-covered hut, the day begins. The air is filled with the comforting smell of wood smoke from a well-tended hearth. This isn't just a fire for warmth. It's the heart of the home. Archaeologists find these hearths as dark, circular stains in the soil, often filled with charcoal and ash. They are the epicenters of ancient life, where food was cooked, stories were told, and families gathered. The presence of charred animal bones and plant remains tells us exactly what was on the menu. As the morning progresses, the community stirs. Look over there, a group of children are laughing. They aren't playing with plastic toys, but with figures intricately carved from bone or wood. One child has a miniature mammoth, another a leaping deer. These aren't just playthings. They are lessons in the animal world, teaching identification and respect from a young age. We find these small, carved objects during excavations, sometimes lost in the dirt, Their tiny forms a poignant reminder of the children who once lived and played right here. These toys whisper stories of childhoods spent learning the skills needed for survival. Now, let's turn our attention to the adults. The space around the shelter is a hive of activity, a prehistoric workshop. Here, a man is carefully knapping a piece of flint. With each precise strike, sharp flakes fly off, creating a new spearhead. The ground around him is littered with tiny stone fragments, what archaeologists call debris. By analyzing these debris patterns, we can identify these specific work areas. We can see where the toolmaker sat, how he positioned himself, and even whether he was right or left. It's like forensic science, but for the Stone Age. Nearby, a woman is working on a large animal hide stretched across a wooden frame. She uses a scraper, perhaps made from a flat piece of bone or a sharpened stone, to clean the hide. Her movements are practiced and efficient, a skill passed on through generations. The goal is to turn this raw material into soft, pliable leather for clothing, blankets, or to repair the shelter itself. We find these scraping tools, often worn smooth from repeated use, in areas that suggest hide processing. The faint chemical signatures left in the soil can sometimes even confirm what kind of work was done there. But it's not all work. The community is also a place of learning and connection. Over by the entrance of the hut, an elder sits with a group of youngsters. His face is a road map of a life lived, and his voice is captivating as he shares stories of the great hunt, of the spirits of the forest, and the legends of their ancestors. This oral tradition is the glue that holds the society together, passing down vital knowledge, history, and values, while stories themselves don't fossilize. The respect for elders and the importance of social learning are inferred from the way living spaces are organized. The central hearth, the communal work areas, they all point to a society built on cooperation and shared knowledge. As the day winds down, everyone gathers back around the central fire. The day's work is done. Tools are put away, and the smell of roasting meat once again fills the air. This is a time for sharing food, for reinforcing social bonds, and for winding down under the stars. The debris patterns around the hearth change. Instead of tool-making flakes, we find discarded food bones, and perhaps a lost bead from a necklace. Each tiny piece of debris is a sentence in the story of their evening. Think about the layout of this camp. Archaeologists call it spatial analysis. We map out exactly where artifacts are found. A cluster of flint flakes over here. A napping station. A concentration of pottery shards and animal bones over there. A cooking and dining area. A collection of awls and needles in another spot. That's where someone was sewing. The empty spaces are just as important. They show us the pathways people used to walk between different activity zones. It's like we're reading a blueprint of their daily lives, written in the trash they left behind. Even their waste tells a story. The toss zone, an area farther from the main living space where larger waste items were discarded, gives us incredible insight. Here we might find larger broken bones, worn-out tools, and other refuse. The very act of separating living space from waste shows a sophisticated understanding of hygiene and organization. They weren't just dropping things wherever they stood. They were actively managing their environment. So, when we look at an archaeological site, we're not just seeing a random scatter of old objects. We are seeing the echoes of these daily routines. We see the laughter of children in a carved toy, the skill of an artisan in a pile of stone flakes, and the wisdom of an elder in the arrangement of the camp. Every artifact, every stain in the soil, is a connection to the people who lived here. They weren't just surviving. They were living rich, complex lives filled with work, play, family, and community. The ground beneath our feet is a history book, and by learning to read its pages, we get to meet the families of the past. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into prehistoric daily life. If you enjoyed stepping back in time with us, please hit that like button and subscribe for more chapters from our ancient world. See you next time. Welcome back to our journey into the past. Today, we're stepping inside the prehistoric home to explore a story often left in the shadows. The crucial role of women in creating and maintaining the very shelters that made survival possible. Far from being passive figures, these women were the architects, engineers, and managers of the domestic world. Their hands, skilled and tireless, transformed raw materials into a place of warmth, safety, and community. Let's start with the heart of the home, the coverings. Imagine a large, conical tent or a sturdy hut made of animal hides. These weren't permanent structures. They were constantly under assault from wind, rain, and snow. Tears and holes were a daily reality, and a small rip could quickly become a catastrophic failure in a storm. It was the women who possessed the specialized knowledge to handle these repairs. They were masters of their craft, using bone needles, sinew thread, and patches of leather to meticulously mend any damage. This wasn't just simple sewing. It was a form of structural engineering, ensuring the shelter remained weatherproof and strong. The creation of new coverings was an even more monumental task. After a successful hunt, the men would bring back the hides, but the long and arduous process of turning a raw, bloody skin into a durable, flexible building material fell to the women. First, the hide had to be scraped clean of all flesh and fat. This was grueling work, often done with sharpened stone or bone scrapers. The women would stretch the hide on a frame or peg it to the ground, laboring for hours under the sun. Once scraped, the hide was treated. Different cultures had different methods. Some used animal brains, which contained natural emulsifiers, to soften the leather, while others used smoke or soaked the hides in tannin-rich water. This tanning process was a form of applied chemistry, passed down through generations, transforming a decaying skin into a material that could last for years. Then came the fitting and sewing. Several tanned hides had to be expertly cut and stitched together to create a single, large covering for a tent or hut. The seams had to be strong and waterproof, a testament to the women's skill with an all in sinew. This process required immense foresight and planning. They had to know exactly how many hides were needed, how to shape them to fit the frame, and how to join them in a way that would shed water and block wind. We see powerful echoes of these prehistoric roles in more recent cultures. Among the Plains tribes of North America, it was the women who owned, erected, and maintained the iconic tip. A woman's skill in hide work directly contributed to her family's comfort and her own status within the community. A well-made tipi was a source of pride, a visible symbol of her diligence and expertise. Similarly, among the Sami people of Northern Europe, who traditionally lived in portable tents, called levu, women were responsible for the hide or fabric coverings. Their knowledge was essential for a life of nomadic reindeer herding in a harsh Arctic environment. Archaeological evidence from prehistoric Europe further supports this picture. At sites like Masirik in Ukraine, where incredible huts were constructed from mammoth bones, we find an abundance of tools associated with hide-working scrapers, awls, and needles in the domestic areas. While we can't know for certain who used them, the ethnographic parallels strongly suggest this was the domain of women. These tools are silent witnesses to the endless hours of labor that went into making a house, a home. Beyond the structure itself, women oversaw the entire ecosystem of domestic life. They managed the fire, the single most important element for warmth, cooking, and protection. They organized the interior space, deciding where people would sleep, where food was stored, and where work was done. They crafted storage containers from leather, bark, or woven grasses to keep food safe from pests and moisture. They prepared the food, gathered edible plants, nuts, and berries, and cared for the children, passing on their vast knowledge to the next generation. The space around the hut was also their domain. It was a workshop, a kitchen, and a social center all in one. Here, hides were scraped, food was processed, and stories were shared. The women's constant presence and activity transformed the area from a simple campsite into a vibrant, functioning homestead. They were the keepers of the social fabric, the ones who fostered the cooperation and community that were essential for the group's survival. Their work, though often quiet and domestic, was the very foundation upon which their society was built. It was a relentless, demanding, and highly skilled job that ensured not just survival, but a life with a degree of comfort, stability, and culture. So, the next time you picture a prehistoric shelter, don't just see the bones and hides. See the hands of the women who scraped, stitched, and managed it all. See their expertise, their resilience, and their indispensable contribution to the human story. Their legacy is in every stitch, every well-scraped hide, and every warm fire that kept the darkness at bay. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. If you found this perspective interesting, Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We'll see you next time. The first light of dawn cuts through the frosty air, painting the snow-covered landscape in hues of pale pink and orange. Inside the warmth of the great hut, a different kind of energy stirs. This is the hour of the hunter. We're stepping back in time, tens of thousands of years, to witness a pivotal moment in the lives of our Ice Age ancestors. The seasonal hunt. Welcome to Chapter 11 of our journey. Imagine this structure not just as a home, but as a strategic base camp. For weeks, sometimes months, this hut has been the center of the world for a small band of people. It's a place of safety, warmth, and community. But survival demands more. It demands venturing out into the vast, dangerous wilderness. The herds are moving, and so must the men. Today, we follow them as they prepare to leave the shelterless embrace to pursue the giants of this frozen world. The woolly mammoth, the steppe bison, the vast herds of caribou and deer. The preparation begins long before the sun rises. It's a quiet, focused ritual. Each man knows his role, his movements economical and practiced. They're checking their gear, the tools that will mean the difference between life and death, feast and famine. The primary weapon is the spear, a long shaft of fire-hardened wood tipped with a razor-sharp point of flint or bone. These aren't just simple pointed sticks. They are masterpieces of prehistoric engineering. The spearheads are knapped with incredible skill, creating edges that can pierce thick hides and bring down animals many times their size. Some of these spears are designed to be thrown, propelled with astonishing force and accuracy by a spear thrower, or this incredible invention, a grooved stick that acts as a lead, effectively lengthens the hunter's arm, multiplying the spear's velocity. It's a game changer, allowing them to strike from a safer distance. We see them practicing their grip, feeling the balance of the spear in their hands. The weight must be perfect, the feel familiar, like an extension of their own body. But the hunt isn't just about raw power. It's about strategy and knowledge passed down through countless generations. The hunters gather, their faces illuminated by the flickering fire. The elder, a man whose skin is a map of past hunts and weathered seasons, points to a crude map drawn in the ash on the floor. He traces the known migration routes, the valleys where the caribou will pass, the salt licks that attract bison. They speak in low tones, discussing the wind, the recent snowfall, and the tracks spotted by scouts just days before. Every piece of information is a vital clue in this high-stakes detective game. They aren't just carrying weapons. Their small leather pouches hold a survival kit honed by millennia of experience. Inside, you'd find extra flint for sharpening blades or starting a fire, strips of dried meat and rendered fat for energy on the long trek, sinew and leather cords for repairs, and perhaps, most importantly, the tools for making more tools. A hunter heading out for days or weeks needed to be self-sufficient, able to fashion a new spear point or repair a torn cloak far from the safety of the hut. Beyond the practical, there is the spiritual. The hunt is a sacred act, a pact between the human and animal worlds. Each hunter carries a personal charm, a small token of power and protection. It might be a polished river stone, the tooth of a cave lion, or a piece of mammoth ivory carved into the shape of a bison. These aren't mere decorations. They're believed to hold a spirit, a connection to the forces that govern the world. We watch as one hunter carefully wraps a small, intricately carved female figurine in a piece of fur. Is this a representation of a goddess? A plea for fertility and abundance? Ensuring the herds will return next season? Another man whispers to a pendant shaped like a mammoth, perhaps asking the spirit of the great beast for a successful and safe hunt, promising respect and honor in return. These rituals are as crucial as sharpening a spear point. They steady the mind, build confidence, and reinforce the group's shared purpose and belief system. They are about to face immense danger, and faith is a powerful shield. Now, they are ready. Dressed in layers of expertly stitched animal hides and furs, reindeer, wolf verve, are insulated against the biting cold. Their boots, also made of layered hides and stuffed with dry grass for insulation, are a testament to their skill as tailors and engineers. They step out of the warm, smoky confines of the hut into the stark, silent, cold. The air is so frigid it burns the lungs. The world is a canvas of white and blue. The small band of hunters moves as one, their footsteps muffled by the fresh snow. They are a brotherhood, bound by shared risk and mutual reliance. Each man trusts the others with his life. A single mistake, a moment of hesitation, could be fatal for the entire group. They communicate with hand signals and subtle gestures, a silent language understood by all. Their senses are on high alert. Every snap of a twig, every shadow on the snow, every scent carried on the wind is analyzed. They are not just walking through the landscape. They are reading it. The hut, now shrinking in the distance, remains the anchor point of their world. It is the destination they hold in their minds. The hunt is not just for themselves, but for everyone back in that. Shelter the women, the children, the elders. The meat and fat from a single mammoth could feed the entire group for weeks, providing not just food but also fuel for lamps. The hide would be used for clothing and to repair the shelter itself. The bones and ivory would be transformed into tools, needles, artworks, and even the very framework of their homes. Nothing would be wasted. This is the essence of the seasonal hunt. The hut is the heart, pumping life-giving blood the hunters out into the world. Their journey is the circulatory system, a dangerous but necessary mission to gather the resources that will sustain the community through the harsh winter months. As they disappear over the snowy ridge, a silent promise hangs in the air. They will return. The success of this expedition is the success of their people. It's a story of courage, ingenuity, and a deep, profound connection to the natural world. Join us next time as we delve into the world of Ice Age art and symbolism, exploring the incredible cave paintings and carvings that give us a window into the minds of our ancestors. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the deep past. In the world of hide huts and whispering grasslands, childhood wasn't a time of structured lessons, but of quiet observation and gentle guidance. We grew up under a vast, open sky, and our classroom was the world itself. The first lesson for any child was the feel of a stone in their small hand. An elder, their own hands weathered like river rocks, would sit with us, not with words, but with actions. They'd show us how to strike one flint against another, the sharp crack echoing in the quiet air. We learned the magic of creating an edge, feeling the stone transform from a blunt pebble into a tool that could shape wood or scrape a hide. Our first knives were clumsy, our first arrowheads lopsided, but they were ours. Born from patience and countless failed attempts. Each successful chip was a small victory, a step closer to understanding the heart of the stone. Learning to read the earth was like learning a secret language. An uncle or an older sibling would point to the ground, a silent gesture towards a scuff in the dirt. At first, it was just a mark, but soon we learned to see the story it told. The splayed toes of a deer, the deep impression of a boar's hoof, the delicate, dancing prints of a fox. We'd lie on our bellies, tracing the tracks with our fingers, feeling the subtle differences. We learned to tell how old a track was by the crispness of its edge, or which way the animal was headed by the spray of dirt. It was a game of what if and where to. What if the deer was limping? Where did the rabbit go to escape the hawk's shadow? The forest floor became a living scroll, and with every passing season, we became more fluent in its script. Knots were another language, a language of fiber and tension. We didn't have books or diagrams. Instead, we learned by watching hands nimble, practiced hands that could turn a simple strand of sinew or vine into a powerful tool. An ant would be mending a net, her fingers a blur, and we would crowd around, mesmerized. She'd slowed down, showing us the loop, the twist, the pull. The first knot she taught us was the simplest, the one to tie a bundle of herbs or secure a flap in the hut. We practiced on blades of grass, on our own hair, until the movements became second nature. From there, we moved to more complex knots, the one that held a fishing line fast, the one that could join two ropes, the one that could be released with a single tug. Each knot had a purpose, a personality. It was a practical magic, binding our world together one loop at a time. Our connection to the sky was just as deep. The elders taught us to look up, not just to see the sun or moon, but to understand their moods. They'd point to a wisp of a cloud and say, The mare's tails are running. Wind is coming. We learned that a ring around the moon meant rain was on its way, and that the particular shade of red at sunset could tell us about the weather tomorrow. We felt the shift in the air before a storm, a certain heaviness, a change in the scent of the earth. We learned the patterns of the stars, not as distant, cold lights, but as a celestial map that guided travelers and marked the changing of seasons. The Big Dipper was our signpost in the night, a comforting, familiar friend. The weather wasn't something to be checked. It was something to be felt, to be lived, a constant conversation between us and the world. Growing up this way, every day was a lesson in belonging. We learned that we were part of a larger whole. The stone we shaped came from the earth. The animal we tracked was our neighbor. The vine we tied was a gift from the forest, and the weather we read was the breath of the world. There was a quiet confidence that grew in us, a deep-seated knowledge that we had the skills to survive, to contribute, to live in harmony with our surroundings. Our games were preparations for life. We'd build miniature huts, practice our aim with small, blunted spears, and have competitions to see who could identify the most bird calls. Our childhood was woven from the threads of practicality and wonder, a tapestry of skills passed down not through words, but through shared experience, a gentle and constant unfolding of the world's secrets. It was a time of becoming not just older, but more connected, more aware, and more at home in the world. Our sense of time was different, too. It wasn't marked by clocks or calendars, but by the rhythm of the sun and moon, the budding of leaves, the migration of birds, and the first frost on the ground. Childhood stretched out like a long, sunlit afternoon, full of moments. The moment we finally mastered a difficult knot, the pride swelling in our chest. The moment we correctly identified the track of a wolf, a thrill of fear and respect running through us. The moment we caught our first fish with a line we'd tied ourselves. These weren't grand achievements, but they were the building blocks of our identity. They taught us patience, resilience, and the quiet joy of competence. We learned to rely on ourselves and on each other. When a storm gathered, we all worked together to secure the huts. When a hunt was successful, we all shared in the bounty. And of course, there were the stories. Around the evening fire, the flames dancing and casting long shadows, the elders would speak. They told tales of the great spirits of the forest, of the cleverness of the coyote, of the courage of the first hunters. These stories were our history, our morals, our entertainment. They weren't just tales, they were instructions for living. They taught us to be respectful of nature, to be brave in the face of hardship, and to be kind to our kin. We'd listened wide-eyed. The crackle of the fire a counterpoint to the deep, rumbling voices. The lessons we learned from stone, track, and sky were given meaning by these stories, connecting our practical world to a spiritual one. Looking back, it was a life of profound simplicity and profound richness. We didn't have much in the way of possessions, but we had everything we needed. We had the skills to provide for ourselves, the community to support us, and a deep, unshakable connection to the land that sustained us. That childhood shaped us, grounding us in a way that is hard to explain. It instilled a sense of wonder that never truly fades, a respect for the intricate web of life, and an understanding that the most important lessons are often the quietest ones. It was a good way to grow up under the wide-open sky, in the world of hide huts and whispering grasslands. Thank you for joining me on this journey back in time. If you enjoyed this reflection, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories from our shared past. See you next time. Welcome back to our journey through the past. Last time, we explored the daily rhythm of life on the plains. But what happened when that rhythm was shattered? Today, we delve into Chapter 13. Storms, challenges, and repairs. Life in the open was a constant negotiation with nature, and our ancestors were masters of adaptation. Their survival depended not just on hunting and gathering, but on their ability to withstand the raw, untamed power of the elements. The sky would darken first. A bruised purple would spread across the horizon, swallowing the familiar blue. The air, once warm and filled with the scent of earth and grass, would turn heavy and cold. Birds would fall silent, their songs replaced by an uneasy quiet. This was the prelude, the warning that everyone had learned to respect. There was no time to waste. you'd see a ripple of activity spread through the camp. It was a well-practiced drill, executed with a calm efficiency born from countless repetitions. The first gusts of wind were like a physical push, testing the integrity of every structure. The hides stretched over wooden frames would begin to flap, a sound like distant thunder. The wind would snake through the smallest gaps, carrying with it the first drops of rain, large, cold, and splattering against the dry ground. Then the real storm would hit. It wasn't just rain. It was a deluge, a wall of water that seemed to erase the world outside. The wind would transform from a push to a howl, a mournful, angry sound that seemed to come from the very soul of the plains. Inside the dwellings, it was a world of flickering firelight and shadows. The roar of the storm was a constant, overwhelming presence. Every family member had a role. The younger ones might be tasked with keeping the central fire fed, its warmth a vital shield against the encroaching cold and damp. The elders, with their deep well of experience, would watch and listen, their eyes scanning the structure for signs of weakness. Their calm presence was as crucial as any physical repair, a steady anchor in the heart of the chaos. This is where their incredible skill came to the forefront. These weren't just simple tents. They were engineered homes, designed to flex and bend with the wind, not break. But even the best designs needed constant maintenance during a severe storm. A leak would start as a small, dark patch on a hide. Immediately, someone would be there. They wouldn't just plug it. They would use a bone, awl, and sinew to skillfully stitch the tear, or apply a patch of rendered animal fat and ash, a waterproof sealant that was surprisingly effective. It was a precise, practiced movement, done quickly by the dim, dancing light of the fire. You'd see people working together, reinforcing the main support poles. As the ground softened with rain, the poles could shift, threatening the entire structure. They would use heavy stones, brought inside before the storm, to brace the bases. They would check the tension on the ropes, holding the hides, adjusting them to distribute the force of the wind more evenly. A rope that was too tight could tear a hide. One that was too loose would allow the wind to get underneath and lift it. It was a delicate balance, and they knew it instinctively. The sounds inside were a mixture of the storm's fury and human resilience. The snap and crackle of the fire, the low murmur of voices sharing instructions or encouragement, the rhythmic scrape of a tool against hide. Children, huddled together, would listen to stories told by their grandparents. Tales of past storms, of great floods, of heroes who outsmarted the wind and the rain. These stories weren't just entertainment. They were lessons in courage and endurance, passed down through generations. They taught the children that storms always pass. Imagine the mental fortitude required. For hours, sometimes for days, the world outside was an invisible, be-all-end force. There was no weather forecasts, no satellite imagery. They relied on their senses, their experience, and their trust in each other. Fear was undoubtedly present, a cold knot in the stomach, but it was overshadowed by a focus on the task at hand. Panic was a luxury they could not afford. Survival was a collective effort, a symphony of small, coordinated actions that, together, held the storm at bay. And then, as gradually as it began, it would end. The wind's howl would soften to a whisper. The relentless drumming of rain on the hides would fade to a gentle patter, and then stop altogether. A profound silence would descend, broken only by the dripping of water from the eaves. Someone would cautiously push aside the flap of the dwelling, and the first rays of post-storm sunlight would slice through the dim interior. The world outside would be transformed. Washed clean, the air would smell of wet earth and ozone. Puddles would glitter like scattered jewels across the plains. The first task was assessment. Everyone would emerge, blinking in the bright light, to survey the damage. A pole might have splintered, a section of hide might be badly torn, or a nearby stream might have overflowed its banks. The work of repair would begin immediately. This phase was just as important as weathering the storm itself. It was about recovery and preparation for the next one. Men and women would work together to replace damaged poles, carefully selecting and shaping new wood. Hides would be taken down, cleaned, and meticulously repaired. Any weaknesses exposed by the storm were addressed, not just fixed. but improved upon. They learned from every gale, every downpour. Their homes became stronger, their techniques more refined. This cycle of challenge and repair was fundamental to their existence. It taught them resilience, ingenuity, and the absolute necessity of community. A family alone might not survive, but a community, working together, could withstand almost anything nature threw at them. The storm was a formidable adversary, but it also served as a powerful teacher and a catalyst for unity. It reminded them of their vulnerability, but also of their incredible strength when they faced the world together. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the challenges our ancestors faced. It's a powerful reminder that human ingenuity has always been our greatest tool for survival. Next time, we'll explore the artistry and culture that flourished even in these harsh conditions. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss it. Say you 10. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're journeying back in time to explore Chapter 14, Trade, Travel, and Portable Homes. We often think of ancient societies as being stuck in one place, but that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, mobility was the key to survival and prosperity for many cultures. And at the heart of this nomadic lifestyle was an ingenious piece of technology: the hide shelter. Imagine a world without permanent cities or highways. Your home wasn't a fixed address, but something you carried with you. This is the reality we're diving into. For countless communities, from the Great Plains of North America to the vast steppes of Central Asia, life was a constant journey. People moved with the seasons, following animal herds, seeking fresh pastures, and gathering resources. This mobile existence wasn't just a random wandering. It was a highly strategic and organized way of life. So, how did they do it? The answer lies in their brilliant portable architecture. Think of the iconic tipi of the plains' indigenous peoples, or the ger, also known as a yurt, used by Mongolian nomads. These weren't just simple tents. They were sophisticated, well-designed homes, made from animal hides, stretched over a wooden frame. The materials were sourced directly from their environment. Bison, deer, or livestock provided the tough, weather-resistant skins, while forests and riverbanks supplied the poles for the framework. What made these high dwellings so revolutionary was their portability. A tipi, for example, could be disassembled by a family in less than an hour. The long wooden poles would then form a travois, a type of sled pulled by dogs, or, later, horses, to carry the bundled hides and other household goods. A Mongolian ger, with its collapsible lattice walls, was similarly designed for quick packing and transport, often loaded onto camels or carts. This ability to pack up and move your entire home meant that your world was not limited by 4 permanent walls. The horizon was your backyard. This mobility was absolutely essential for survival. For hunting societies, it meant they could follow the great bison herds across the plains, ensuring a constant supply of food, clothing, and materials for their shelters. For pastoralist groups, it meant moving their livestock, sheep, goats, or cattle to new grazing lands, preventing overgrazing and ensuring the health of their herds. This wasn't just about finding food. It was about living in harmony with the environment, moving with its natural rhythms rather than trying to dominate it. But the story gets even more fascinating when we look beyond simple survival. This mobile lifestyle was the engine of a massive, interconnected world of trade and cultural exchange. Because people were constantly on the move, they inevitably met other groups. These encounters weren't always conflicts. More often, they were opportunities. Opportunities to trade, to share knowledge, and to build relationships. Picture this: a group that lives in the mountains, rich in timber and stone for tools, meets a plains-dwelling group with a surplus of bison hides and dried meat. What happens next? Trade. The mountain group might trade high-quality wood for tipi poles in exchange for durable hides to cover them. A coastal group might trade seashells, prized for decoration and jewelry, with an inland group for obsidian, a volcanic glass, perfect for making razor-sharp arrowheads. These interactions created vast trade networks that stretched for thousands of miles. Archaeologists have found seashells from the Gulf of Mexico in the heart of the Midwest, and copper from the Great Lakes region, all the way in the southeast. These items didn't just walk there on their own. They were passed from hand to hand, from group to group, along these ancient highways of trade, and what enabled people to travel these long distances. Their portable homes. They could set up a familiar, comfortable camp wherever their journey took them. These trade routes were more than just economic networks. They were conduits for culture. When you trade goods, you also trade ideas, stories, technologies, and beliefs. A new way of decorating pottery might be shared. A song or a spiritual ceremony could be learned and adapted. A more effective design for a bow or an arrow could be copied and improved upon. This cross-pollination of ideas led to a rich and dynamic cultural landscape. Different groups maintained their unique identities, but they were also part of a much larger, interconnected world. The hide shelter was the vehicle for this exchange. It allowed for gatherings, for great seasonal ceremonies where different bands and tribes would come together. At these gatherings, alliances were formed, marriages were arranged, and goods were traded on a massive scale. It was here that news and information would travel across the continent. Imagine a summer encampment with hundreds of tipis dotting the landscape, each one a home, a part of a temporary, bustling city. These were the social and political centers of the mobile world. The social structure of these communities was also shaped by their mobile lifestyle. Cooperation was essential. Everyone had a role in the process of moving camp. Women were often the masters of the home, responsible for its setup and take, as well as the preparation of the hides. Men were typically responsible for hunting and defense. The entire community had to work together seamlessly to transport their belongings and re-establish their village in a new location. This fostered a strong sense of community and mutual dependence. Furthermore, the design of the dwellings themselves reflected their social values. A tipi or a gya was often a communal space, centered around a hearth that provided warmth and a place for cooking. It was a space for family, for storytelling, and for passing down traditions from one generation to the next. Even though the home itself was portable, the concept of home as a center of family and community remained incredibly strong. So, when we think about ancient history, let's move past the image of static, isolated villages. Instead, let's envision a world in constant motion. A world connected by ancient trails, where people carried their homes on their backs, driven by the seasons and the pursuit of resources. The humble hide shelter wasn't just a place to sleep. It was the key that unlocked a continent. It enabled a dynamic lifestyle of trade, travel, and interaction that fostered vast cultural networks and allowed diverse societies to thrive in a challenging, ever-changing world. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most liberating innovation is not one that roots us to a single spot, but one that gives us the freedom to move. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this journey into the world of portable homes fascinating, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. Let us know in the comments what other ancient technologies you'd like to learn about. We'll see you in the next video. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the land, the world outside the hut grows quiet. But inside, a different kind of life begins to stir, centered around the warm, dancing flames of the hearth. This is where the magic truly happens. It's more than just a fire for warmth or cooking. It's the heart of the community, a flickering stage for the stories that bind a people together. Imagine settling in, the cool night air kept at bay by the sturdy walls of the shelter, the scent of wood smoke mingling with the earthy aroma of the hut itself. The faces around you, young and old, are illuminated by the fire's golden glow, their eyes wide with anticipation. This is where the elders, the keepers of knowledge, lean forward, their voices a low, mesmerizing rhythm against the crackle of the flames. They begin to weave the tales that have been passed down through countless generations. These aren't just simple bedtime stories. They are the living history, the soul, and the science of the tribe. They are the threads that connect the present to a deep and resonant past. The shelter, this humble structure of wood, mud, and thatch, transforms from a mere physical refuge into a sacred, emotional space. It becomes a theater, a classroom, and a temple all in one, pulsating with the collective memory of the community. The stories begin, maybe tonight. It's the tale of the clever coyote who tricked the stars into the sky, his laughter echoing in the yips you hear far off in the distance. The storyteller's hands become puppets in the firelight, their shadows dancing on the walls, mimicking the coyote's cunning movements. The children gasp and giggle, but they are also learning. They're learning about the importance of wit, the dangers of hubris, and the intricate patterns of the constellations they see when they step outside. The story isn't just entertainment. It's a star chart, a moral leçon, and a reminder that even the smallest creatures can have the biggest impact on the world. Or perhaps the story is a more somber one, about the great ancestors who first journeyed to this land. The elder's voice drops, filled with reverence, as they describe the hardships and the triumphs of those who came before. They speak of the great river, not just as a body of water, but as a living spirit, a benevolent entity that provided for the ancestors, and a fearsome one when its power was not respected. The story reinforces a deep connection to the land, teaching that the rivers, mountains, and forests are not just resources to be used, but relatives to be honored. The hut feels more secure, its foundations seemingly rooted in the very history being told. These nighttime rituals are fundamental. They are how a child learns their place in the world. They hear about the spirits that inhabit the rustling leaves of the ancient trees, and the powerful guardians that dwell in the highest mountain peaks. These dailies personify the natural world, fostering a relationship built on respect and reciprocity, not dominance. When a storm rages outside, the story might be about the thunderbird, its powerful wing beats creating the thunder, its flashing eyes the lightning. The story doesn't just explain the storm, it gives it meaning, transforming fear into awe and understanding. Inside the hut, surrounded by kin, the storm becomes a shared experience, a narrative they are all a part of. The shelter itself becomes a character in these stories. It's the safe space from which the heroes of legend venture out, and the welcoming haven they return to. It's the womb of the community, where identities are forged and values are instilled. Think about it, this space witnessed every birth, every significant coming-of-age ceremony, every mourning of a loved one. The very walls seem to absorb these powerful emotions and memories. The smoke from the central fire, carrying the words of the storytellers, drifts up, and out of the smoke hole, like a prayer or a message sent to the spirits and ancestors watching over them. These storytelling sessions were also a practical form of education. They contained encyclopedic knowledge about the local environment. Through a story about a heroic hunt, a young boy would learn the tracks of a deer, the best places to find medicinal herbs, and which berries were safe to eat. A tale about a goddess weaving a basket would contain intricate instructions on the patterns and techniques passed down through generations of women. This was a library of the mind, a university of the hearth, where the curriculum was delivered through epic, unforgettable narratives. There were no written texts, no spreadsheets or diagrams. Knowledge was alive, embodied in the storyteller and breathed into the listeners. And the fire was the crucial element. Its light pushed back the literal darkness, creating an intimate circle of inclusion. But it also pushed back the darkness of ignorance and disconnection. The flickering flames created a hypnotic, almost trance-like state, opening the minds and hearts of the listeners. The shadows it cast were a canvas for the imagination, allowing fantastical beasts and legendary heroes to spring to life right there in the hut. The shared focus on the fire and the storyteller created a powerful bond, a unified consciousness among the group. For those few hours, they were not just individuals. They were one mind, one heart, experiencing the story together. This is the profound truth of these ancient shelters. They were not just practical structures designed to keep out the rain and cold. They were emotional centers, the cultural nucleus of community life. They were the vessels that held the stories, the ethics, and the very identity of a people. The architecture of the hut, circular, communal, centered on the fire, was a physical manifestation of their worldview. Everything and everyone was connected, gathered around the warm, life-giving core. It was inside these humble dwellings, under the spell of firelight and ancient words, that a group of people truly became a community. So, the next time you see a reconstruction of an ancient hut or a traditional roundhouse, try to see beyond the mud and the timber. Picture the fire burning in the center. Imagine the faces bathed in its warm light, the air thick with smoke and story. Hear the voice of the elder, weaving tales of spirits, animals, and ancestors. Feel the sense of safety, belonging, and shared wonder. You'll realize you're not just looking at an old house. You're looking at the cradle of a culture, a place where humanity was not just sheltered, but also shaped, inspired, and made whole. Thanks for watching, And if you enjoyed this journey into the past, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our deep dive into the lives of our ancient ancestors. Today, we're exploring a fascinating part of their world, the art of moving. Imagine this. The seasons are changing, the herds are on the move, and it's time for your entire community to pack up and follow. This wasn't just a simple move. It was a highly organized, skillful process of dismantling their homes and leaving almost no trace behind. Let's unravel the story of seasonal migration and how they packed up their world. So, what did one of these camps look like? Think of a collection of huts, often circular, made from a frame of wooden poles and covered with layers of animal hides. These weren't just random shelters. They were sophisticated, weather-resistant homes, perfectly adapted to their environment. But their genius wasn't just in building them, it was in taking them apart. When the time came to move, the entire camp would spring into action. It was a community effort, a well-rehearsed dance that had been passed down through generations. The process would start with the coverings. The animal hides, which were carefully stitched together, had to be removed from the wooden frames. These hides were incredibly valuable. They were the result of successful hunts, long hours of scraping, tanning, and sewing. They were the barrier between the family and the freezing winds or soaking rain. So they were handled with immense care. They would be unfastened, likely from ties made of leather thongs or sinew, and then carefully folded. Think about folding a heavy leather blanket today. It's a two-person job. These hides were likely folded in a specific way to protect them from damage during transport and to make them easier to carry. A tear or hole would be a serious problem, so every fold was deliberate. Once the hides were off, the skeleton of the hut was exposed, a ring of wooden poles. These poles were just as precious as the hides. In many environments, like the open steppe or tundra, good straight timber was a scarce resource. You couldn't just find new poles at your next campsite. So, these were carried along. The poles would be carefully unlashed and bundled together. Binding them tightly was crucial for transport. They might have been carried by people, or perhaps dragged using a simple travois, maybe pulled by dogs or the people themselves. These bundles of poles were the framework of their future home, a promise of shelter at the next destination. Inside the hut, personal belongings would be packed. Tools made of stone, bone, and antler. Sewing kits with sharp bone awls. Containers made from animal bladders or woven grasses. Maybe some decorative items like beads or carved figures. Everything had its place. These items would be packed into leather bags or baskets. Weight was a huge consideration. You only carried what was absolutely necessary for survival and what held cultural or personal significance. There was no room for clutter in a nomadic lifestyle. Every single object had a purpose. Now, let's talk about the hearth, the heart of the home. The central fire pit was where food was cooked, tools were made, stories were told, and families gathered for warmth. When the camp was dismantled, the fire would be extinguished. The hearth area, however, often holds the most clues for archaeologists today. The stones that formed the ring around the fire might be scattered, but the heat from countless fires would have baked and discolored the earth beneath, leaving a permanent mark. This subtle sign is often one of the first things archaeologists look for when excavating a potential campsite. One of the most remarkable aspects of these moves was the principle of leaving no trace. This wasn't necessarily for environmental reasons as we think of it today, but more out of practicality and respect. They took everything valuable with them. Anything left behind was either waste or too heavy to transport. This is why archaeologists find what they find: broken tools. Flakes of stone from making new tools, called debitage food scraps, like animal bones, and the occasional lost bead. These remnants of daily life are treasure troves of information. The bones tell us what they ate. The stone flakes show us where they sat and worked. And a lost item gives us a glimpse into their personal lives. So, how do archaeologists know these were seasonal camps and not permanent villagers? The clues are subtle. First, the type of animal bones found can indicate the season. For example, the presence of newborn or very young animal remains suggests a spring camp. Conversely, the age of deer antlers, which are shed at specific times of the year, can also pinpoint the season the site was occupied. Second, The location itself is a huge clue. A camp located in a high, exposed area might be a summer camp, taking advantage of cool breezes and a good vantage point to spot game. A camp in a sheltered river valley, protected from the wind, is more likely a winter encampment. By mapping these different sites, archaeologists can trace the annual migration routes of these ancient peoples, following their journey across the landscape as they followed the seasons and the herds. The archaeological signature of these sites is very light. Unlike a permanent village, there are no deep foundations, no large trash pits, or accumulated layers of occupation over centuries. Instead, you find a thin layer of artifacts. You might find a cluster of post holes, faint circles in the soil where the hut poles once stood. Sometimes, stones used to weigh down the edges of the hide coverings are found in a telltale circular pattern. These tent rings are classic indicators of a temporary structure. Imagine archaeologists carefully scraping away the soil, and suddenly, a circular patch of darkened earth appears, the ghost of an ancient hearth. Around it, they find a scattering of tiny flint chips and a broken bone needle. A few feet away, they uncover a faint ring of stones. Putting these pieces together, they can reconstruct the scene. A family sitting around a fire, inside a hide-covered hut, repairing tools and clothing, preparing to move on. It's like solving a puzzle with pieces that are thousands of years old. This cycle of building, dwelling, dismantling, and moving was the rhythm of their lives. It was a life of constant motion, deeply connected to the natural world. Their home wasn't a single place, but a path they traveled, a series of temporary stops on a much larger journey. Their knowledge of the land, the seasons, and their resources was immense. The ability to pack up their entire world and carry it with them wasn't just a skill. It was the key to their survival and success for thousands of years. Thanks for joining me on this journey back in time. I hope this gave you a new appreciation for the incredible ingenuity and resilience of our ancestors. If you enjoyed this, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from our distant past. See you in the next video. Today, we're journeying back in time, tens of thousands of years, to explore one of humanity's most ingenious inventions, the humble hide hut. It might sound simple, but these structures were a revolutionary technology that allowed our ancestors to survive and thrive in some of the harshest environments on Earth. What's truly fascinating is how different cultures, separated by vast oceans and thousands of years, independently arrived at very similar designs. It's a perfect example of convergent evolution, but for human technology. So, grab your virtual mammoth skin cloak, and let's step inside the world of ancient architecture. First, let's travel to North America, around 13,000 years ago, to meet the Clovis people. These were some of the earliest well-documented inhabitants of the continent, and they were expert big-game hunters, following herds of mammoths, bison, and mastodons. For a nomadic lifestyle like that, you need a home that's easy to pack up and move. Enter the Clovis tipi-like structure. While no complete huts have survived, archaeologists have found compelling evidence in the form of post-hole circles. These circles, often with a central hearth, suggest they were building conical tents using wooden poles as a frame. Think about it. You take several long poles, lean them together at the top, and spread them out at the base to form a cone. This shape is incredibly stable and efficient. Then, you covered this frame with stitched-together animal hides, probably from the very bison or mammoths they hunted. The hides would be scraped, prepared, and sewn together using bone needles and sinew thread. A smoke hole at the top would let out smoke from the central fire, which provided warmth, light, and a way to cook. This design was lightweight, portable, and could be set up or taken down relatively quickly. For the Clovis people, constantly on the move, this was the perfect mobile home. Now, let's jump across the globe and forward in time to Mesolithic Europe. Roughly 10,000 to 5,000 years ago, the massive ice sheets had retreated, and forests were spreading across the continent. People here were also hunter-gatherers, living off red deer, wild boar, and abundant fish from the rivers. And what kind of homes did they build? At sites like Mount Sundell in Ireland, archaeologists have found evidence of huts that are strikingly similar to what we imagine for the Clovis people. They discovered circular arrangements of post holes, indicating a round structure supported by saplings or poles. likely bent over and tied at the top to create a dome or cone shape. Again, this frame would have been covered with animal hides, bark, or turf. A central hearth was almost always present. The similarities are uncanny. These Mesolithic Europeans, with no connection to the Clovis people in America, faced a similar problem. They needed sturdy but temporary shelters that could withstand the European climate. They used the materials at handwood for the frame and animal hides. For the covering end arrived at a nearly identical solution. The circular design is efficient for heating, maximizes interior space for the materials used, and stands up well to wind. It's a brilliant piece of engineering, developed independently. Let's head north, way north, to the icy world of the Paleo-Inuit peoples, who began migrating into the Arctic around 4,500 years ago. The Arctic is one of the most extreme environments on Earth. Trees are scarce, and the cold is relentless. So how did they build their shelters? While they're famous for their igloos made of snow, in the summer months or in areas without suitable snow, they relied on a different kind of structure. The tupik was a tent, traditionally made from sealskins or caribou hides, stretched over a frame of driftwood or whalebone. See the pattern here? Once again, it's a frame and covering system. Given the lack of tall trees, the frames might have been lower and more dome-shaped, using whatever scarce wood they could find washed up on the shore, or even the massive bones of whales. The skins of sea mammals like seals were perfect for the covering. They were waterproof and incredibly tough. These tents had to withstand brutal Arctic winds and provide a warm, dry space for families. The Paleo-Inuit refined this design over millennia, perfecting the techniques for sewing skins to make them watertight and creating internal layouts that were incredibly efficient for warmth and living. Despite the vastly different environment and available materials, the fundamental principle remained the same as the huts in temperate Europe and North America. Finally, let's journey to the vast, open grasslands of the Eurasian steppe, the homeland of countless nomadic cultures over thousands of years. Like the Scythians, and later the Mongols, the steppe is a land of endless grass, dramatic temperature swings, and constant wind. For millennia life here has been centered around pastoralism, herding animals, like horses, sheep, and goats. This lifestyle is inherently nomadic, following the seasons and the grazing, and the quintessential dwelling of the steppe is the yurt, or gur. Now, the classic yurt, with its complex lattice wall, is a later development, a masterpiece of portable architecture. But its ancient predecessors were simpler, yet followed the same core concept. These early steppe dwellings were likely dome-shaped tents, using a frame of wooden poles covered with felted wool or animal hides. Felt, made by matting and pressing sheep's wool, was a key innovation. It's an excellent insulator, lightweight, and readily available when you have large flocks of sheep. These structures had to be portable enough to be packed onto carts or animals, strong enough to resist the powerful steppe winds, and insulated enough for cold nights. The circular, domed shape is, again, the most logical solution. It minimizes the surface area exposed to wind and is structurally very sound. So, let's put it all together. We have the Clovis people in North America, Mesolithic hunters in Europe, Paleo-Inuit groups in the Arctic, and nomadic herders on the Eurasian steppe. These cultures were separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. They spoke different languages, had different beliefs, and hunted different animals. Yet, when faced with the fundamental human need for shelter in a mobile context, they all looked at the materials around them: poles, bones, hides, felt, and converged on a remarkably similar solution: a round, frame and cover tent. This tells us something profound about human ingenuity. We are incredible problem solvers. The laws of physics, geometry, and thermodynamics are the same everywhere. A cone or dome is a strong, stable shape. A fire in the center radiates heat evenly. A skin or felt covering keeps the elements out. Our ancestors, wherever they were in the world, figured this out. They weren't just surviving. They were engineering, innovating, and perfecting their designs based on their specific needs and environments. From the bison-hide tipis of the American plains to the sealskin tupiks of the Arctic and the felt yurts of the steppe, the hide hut is more than just a primitive tent. It's a testament to a shared human brilliance, a universal answer to the universal question of how to make a home in a world on the move. It's a powerful reminder that we often find common solutions because we share a common humanity. Thanks so much for watching. I find this stuff absolutely fascinating, and I hope you did too. If you enjoyed this journey into our ancient past, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history and archaeology. Let me know in the comments which ancient technology you'd like to explore next. See you in the next video. Have you ever wondered how people lived tens of thousands of years ago? I mean, what did their homes even look like? We see them in movies and museums, but how do we actually know? It's not like they left behind blueprints. Well, the answer is buried right under our feet. And today, we're going on a virtual archaeological dig to uncover the secrets of ancient homes. Imagine a crime scene, but the crime happened 15,000 years ago. The detectives are archaeologists, and their clues aren't fingerprints, but faint stains in the soil, bits of charcoal, and scattered stones. This is how we piece together the story of a home long since vanished. Let's start with the foundation. Ancient people often used wooden posts to support the walls and roof of their huts. Over time, the wood rots away, but it leaves behind a distinct mark in the ground called a put. These are usually darker, circular patches of soil. When archaeologists find a pattern of these, say, a circle or an oval, they can map out the exact shape and size of the structure. It's like connecting the dots to reveal the ghost of a building. Now, what about the inside? A key feature in any ancient home was the hearth, the prehistoric equivalent of a kitchen stove and a central heating system all in one. A hearth is essentially a fireplace. After thousands of years, what's left is a patch of hardened, reddish, baked earth, often filled with charcoal, ash, and fire-cracked rocks. The location of the hearth tells us where the center of activity was. It's where people cooked, stayed warm, and gathered to share stories. Finding a hearth inside a ring of post holes is a jackpot moment for an archaeologist. It's a sure sign you've found a home. But what did they eat in these homes? The answer is often found right around the hearth. We find discarded animal bones, sometimes broken open to get at the nutritious marrow inside. By identifying these bones, we can figure out their diet. Were they hunting mammoth, bison, or deer? We also find tiny, charred seeds or nutshells, which tell us about the plants they gathered. These aren't just leftovers. They're a menu from the past, and it wasn't just about food. These huts were also workshops. Archaeologists find specialized tools that tell us what people were doing. For example, scrapers made from flint were used to clean animal hides for clothing or blankets. Sharp blades called burins were used to carve bone and antler into needles, awls, and even art. When we find clusters of these tools in one area of the hut, it's like finding a prehistoric craft corner. You can almost picture someone sitting there, working by the firelight. And let's be honest, ancient people were a bit messy, just like us. They had trash piles, which archaeologists call middens. These are treasure troves of information. Everything they threw away: broken tools, food scraps. Production was stands up here. A midden is like a time capsule of daily life. By carefully excavating it layer by layer, we can see how their diet or technology changed over time. Now, let us take a trip to some real-life sites where these clues have brought ancient homes back to life. First, let's head to Texas, to the Galt site. Here, archaeologists found an incredible circular stone pavement, dating back about 15,000 years. It's believed to be the floor of a structure, possibly a hut. The density of artifacts here, millions of them, shows this was a place people returned to again and again, a true home base. Next, we traveled to Pennsylvania, to the Meadowcroft Rock. This is one of the oldest sites of human habitation in North America. Tucked under a massive rock overhang, people found shelter here for thousands of years. Excavations have revealed numerous hearths, layer upon layer, showing continuous use. It gives us an amazing, stratified record of life, with each layer telling a different chapter of the story. Now, let's cross the Atlantic to the Czech Republic, to a site called Dolniva. This place is famous for its mammoth hunter settlements from around 27,000 years ago. Here, archaeologists found the remains of several huts, some dug partially into the ground and likely covered with animal hides. One hut was particularly special. It contained a clay baking kiln and over 2,000 small, fired clay figurines, suggesting it might have been the workshop of a shaman or artist. It shows that these weren't just simple shelters. They were places of culture and ritual. The post holes here even showed that some structures were supported by massive mammoth bones. Finally, let's visit Starkar in the United Kingdom, dating back about 11,000 years. This site has some of the best preserved organic remains in Europe. Archaeologists found a wooden platform on the edge of an ancient lake, an evidence of what might be the oldest known house in Britain, a circular structure with post holes and a concentration of artifacts. The most amazing finds were things that usually rot away, like rolls of birch bark and headdresses made from deer skulls. These incredible details give us a vivid picture of the people who lived there, from a simple stain in the soil to a full-blown reconstruction. Archaeology allows us to walk through the homes of our most distant ancestors. Each post hole, each fragment of bone, each stone tool, is a word in a story that has been waiting thousands of years to be told. It's a powerful reminder that no matter how much time passes, the need for a place to call home is something that connects us all. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey into the past. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure. See you next time. Hey everyone, welcome back to our deep dive into human history. Have you ever built a fort as a kid? Maybe out of pillows, blankets, or some branches in the backyard. That instinct to create shelter, to make a safe space, is one of the oldest and most fundamental parts of being human. Today, we're going way back, long before skyscrapers and suburban homes, to explore the incredible dwellings of our earliest ancestors. These weren't just places to sleep, they were masterpieces of ingenuity, resilience, and adaptation. They are a testament to how we, as a species, learned to survive and thrive in a world full of challenges. So, let's start with a common misconception. When we think of cavemen, we picture people living deep inside dark, damp caves. While caves were certainly used, especially for their natural protection from the elements and predators, they weren't the only option. In fact, many early human shelters were sophisticated structures built out in the open. Our ancestors were not just passively finding shelter, they were actively creating it. Let's travel to the frozen plains of Ice Age Europe, around 25,000 years ago. Here, archaeologists have uncovered some of the most astonishing early structures ever found. Huts made from the bones of woolly mammoths. Imagine the sheer effort and planning required. These weren't just a random pile of bones. They were intricate frameworks, with massive tusks forming arched doorways and interlocking skulls and leg bones, creating sturdy, dome-shaped walls. The builders would then likely cover this framework with animal hides, creating a warm, insulated home capable of withstanding the brutal Arctic winds. What does a mammoth bone hut tell us? It tells us that these people had an intimate understanding of their environment. They knew that timber was scarce on the vast, treeless steppes. So, they used the most abundant and durable material available. The remains of the giant beasts they hunted. This wasn't just resourceful, it was genius. It shows a deep knowledge of material properties, structural engineering, and the seasonal availability of resources. They were architects of the Ice Age. Now, let's move to a different part of the world and a different time. In places like the Near East, around 12,000 years ago, we see the beginnings of more permanent settlements. The Natufian people, for example, built they would dig a circular pit into the ground and then build a superstructure of wood and thatch on top. Why dig into the earth? For insulation. The ground maintains a much more stable temperature than the air. It keeps you cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter. This simple but brilliant technique shows a sophisticated understanding of thermodynamics. These weren't just homes, they were climate-controlled environments. Inside these homes, archaeologists have found hearths for fire, storage pits for food, and even stone-paved floors. This tells us about their daily lives. They weren't just surviving, they were creating a home. They were processing food, staying warm, and organizing their living space. The layout of these settlements, with houses clustered together, also suggests a complex social structure and community living. Shelter was becoming the heart of the community. The sheer variety of these ancient dwellings is staggering and reveals the incredible flexibility of the human mind. In coastal areas, people used shells and driftwood. In forested regions, they built elaborate structures from timber and bark. They used mud, reeds, stone, and animal skins. Whatever the local environment provided, our ancestors found a way to use it. Each shelter is a unique solution to a specific set of environmental problems. It's a physical record of their knowledge of local climate, animal behavior, seasonal changes, and available materials. They weren't just building houses. They were embedding their knowledge of the world into the very structures they lived in. This adaptability is perhaps our greatest strength as a species. While other animals have bodies specifically adapted to one type of environment, humans use their minds to adapt any environment to their needs. Our adaptation isn't just biological, it's cultural and technological. The ability to envision a structure, gather the materials, and work together to build it is a hallmark of human intelligence. It requires foresight, planning, communication, and cooperation. Think about the risks involved. A poorly constructed shelter could collapse or fail to protect you from a predator or a freezing night. Every successful dwelling represents generations of trial and error, of knowledge passed down, and of continuous innovation. It's easy to look at these ancient huts and see them as primitive, but they are anything but. They represent a deep and complex relationship between humans and their environment. They show a level of ingenuity and resilience that is truly. These early builders were scientists, engineers, and artists all rolled into one. They were observing the world, hypothesizing about what would work, experimenting with materials, and ultimately, creating functional and even beautiful homes that allowed our species to spread across every continent on Earth. They laid the literal foundations for everything that came after, from the first villages to the sprawling cities we live in today. So, the next time you see a picture of an ancient hut, don't just see a simple shelter. See a story of survival. See a monument to human ingenuity. See the incredible resilience of our ancestors and their profound connection to the natural world. These dwellings are not just relics of the past. They are a powerful reminder of our species' incredible journey and our amazing capacity to adapt and thrive, no matter the challenge. Thanks so much for watching and joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this as fascinating as I do, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration. See you in the next video. And so, we arrive at the end of our journey. After all, the techniques, the struggles, the triumphs of building with our own hands, we come back to this simple structure. Look at it. Just wood and hide, earth and sinew. It seems so basic, doesn't it? Almost primitive, but in its simplicity lies its profound strength. This isn't just a shelter from the rain or a shield against the wind. It's a symbol, a powerful testament to human survival. For countless generations, this was home. This was the center of the universe. Imagine the world outside, vast and untamed, a place of endless forests, roaming beasts, and unpredictable storms. Now, picture stepping through that low doorway. The instant change. The wind dies down, the chill recedes. Inside, there's the soft glow of a fire, its warmth pushing back the darkness and the cold. This is the feeling of safety, a primal comfort that's coded into our very DNA. It's a feeling of being protected, of being held by the structure you built. Every piece of wood, every stitched hide, is a promise of security. Think about the sounds. Outside, the howl of the wind or the distant cry of a predator. Inside, the crackle of the hearth, the soft murmur of voices, the rhythmic sound of someone working on a tool or a piece of clothing. This is the sound of family. This hut wasn't just a place for one person to sleep. It was the heart of a community, a clan, a family. It was where stories were told, where children were born and raised, where a tired hunter could return to the smiles of his loved ones. It was the cradle of human connection, the physical space where bonds were forged and strengthened, day after day, night after night. This structure is more than the sum of its parts. It's a library of ancient knowledge. Every knot, every joint, every choice of material is a chapter in a story passed down through millennia. It's the wisdom of knowing which tree has the strongest wood, which animal hide best repels water, how to position the entrance to break the prevailing wind. This wasn't learned from a book. It was learned by doing, by watching, by listening to elders. It was knowledge earned through trial and error, through generations of successes and failures. To build this hut is to connect with that long, unbroken chain of ancestors. It's to feel their hands guiding yours, to hear their wisdom whispered on the wind. When we look at this humble shelter, we're not just seeing an ancient building technique. We're looking at a monument to human resilience. It represents our ability to adapt, to innovate, and to thrive in any environment. From the frozen tundra to the scorching desert, our ancestors found ways to create this pocket of warmth and safety. They used what the land provided, their ingenuity, and their communal strength to carve out a place for themselves in a wild world. This hut is the physical embodiment of that defiant, creative spirit. Let's take a moment and just be here. Feel the quiet strength of this place. The air is still, filled with the faint, earthy scent of cured hides and wood smoke. It feels grounded, solid. It doesn't shout its importance. It doesn't need to. Its power is in its quiet endurance. It has stood against storms, sheltered generations, and witnessed the turning of countless seasons. It's a silent guardian, a constant in a changing world. It reminds us that what is truly essential is often simple. Warmth, safety, the company of those we love. This entire process, from felling the first tree to stretching the last hide, has been about more than just construction. It's been an act of remembering. In our modern world of concrete and steel, it's easy to forget where we came from. We live in boxers, disconnected from the sources of our food, our water, our shelter. Recreating this hut is a way to bridge that gap. It's a way to touch the past, to understand on a physical, visceral level what it meant to survive. It teaches us humility and respect for the skills of our ancestors. They weren't simple people. They were masters of their world, possessing a depth of practical knowledge that we can only marvel at. And this knowledge isn't lost. It's just dormant. It lives on in places like this. It lives on in anyone who feels the call to work with their hands, to connect with the natural world, to build something real and meaningful. This hut is a beacon. It calls to that part of us that remembers, that yearns for a simpler, more direct way of living. It's a reminder that even in our complex, technological age, the fundamental human needs remain the same. We all seek a place of warmth, a feeling of safety, and the comfort of our family, our tribe. As the light fades and the stars begin to appear, the hut takes on a new character. It seems to glow from within, a single point of light and life in the vast darkness. It's a powerful image, isn't it? A tiny spark of human warmth against the immense, indifferent cosmos. For our ancestors, this was everything. This was the known world, the safe world. Everything beyond its hide walls was the great unknown. And yet, day after day, they would step out into that unknown, and at the end of the day, they would return to this, to home. So, as we take our final look, let's not see it as just a primitive dwelling. Let's see it for what it truly is. A masterpiece of survival, a symbol of family, a vessel of ancient wisdom, and a testament to the enduring, unbreakable spirit of humanity. It teaches us that, no matter how far we've come, the foundations of our existence are built on the simple, quiet strength found in a shelter made of earth and wood and hide. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey. Keep exploring, keep learning, and never forget the lessons of the past.